Hi everybody, this is Dan Fredrickson, creator of the Hyperbaric Lifestyle and author of the book Bohica, Stories of Navy Divers. Today we're going to talk about the airport game. As I told you before, I love games. The airport game is something I've played for many, many years. What it does is it gives you an informative reason to look at people and have a reason to find out what they're all about. I call it the airport game because I used to always play it at the airport. I travel a lot and I don't sit around scrolling on my phone very often, only when I really have to, because it gets boring and it's old, and looking at people is much more interesting. What this does is it gives you an opportunity to either guess or figure out and or start to get good at trying to figure out who and what people are all about. That way when you meet people, you have a better idea to how to approach them properly and hopefully make friends where you might possibly have made an enemy before. This makes it so much more fun when you do things like this. The reason I do call it the airport game and why I do it there is because it's the easiest place to sit and watch people move around. Either people are rushing by to go catch their airplane, or they have a lot of time and they're just milling around, wasting time and trying not to sit in their chairs all day. And then you could really get a good look at those people. And what's fun is trying to evaluate what they're all about. And you learn a lot about different people from different places. And what I usually do then is I have several questions that I need to ask. It's typical me, asking all the questions. And what we do is by answering all these questions in our mind quickly, especially if I'm with somebody, it's fun to play with somebody when you do this. I did this with my daughters a lot when we traveled. But if you're by yourself, it's still kind of fun. So what you do is the questions you ask are, first off, is it a man, woman, or you don't know? Because sometimes it's hard to tell, and you do your best guess. Then you figure out how old they are, how big they are, how much they weigh, how tall, all those kind of things like that. You're trying to figure out a whole thing on them. Then you look at them and say, does the person look healthy, feeling bad, something going on with them? And you try to guess on that. How rich are they? How much money do they have? Are they just barely getting by? You look at their clothes, you look at different things. And again, this is not always a great evaluation, but generally it gives you an idea of what the person's all about by their lifestyle from their clothes. And then what kind of profession they are. Are they an engineer, a doctor, a musician? Something like that. Usually that's pretty obvious when you look at them. What type of person doesn't always mean you're right, but after a while you get good at it. Then you look at them, what's their general attitude? Did they look nice? Did they look like a jerk? Is it somebody you'd want to meet? Or is it somebody you think right off the bat you got a feeling of, I can't stand that person? Just looking at them, it's kind of strange. I call that the aura look. That means you feel the aura of that person and it gives you a positive or negative feeling. And that's also something you need to practice too when you're around people. Those feelings you have when you meet someone generally are correct. You just generally push them away. I call it my sixth sense. That's something that this seems to help me do because I can do it now from a distance. And it's kind of fun. You go, I'd like to meet that person. And the last thing, have they had any plastic surgery? Have they had stuff done to them? All the extra little things about them. Do they have their purple hair natural? Something like that. It's kind of fun to do. And I had so much fun with my daughters. And we were doing this and we had watched this one particular Indian guy that went by. He was, about 40 years old. And we were talking about it. My daughters and I went through the whole list on him. And so it was kind of funny because we've been waiting for a couple hours for a flight because our flight had been delayed and we were there for quite a while, so we had a chance to see. And we were talking about it, and all of a sudden I get a tap on my shoulder. And it's this Indian guy that we had seen earlier. And he heard us talking about different people and stuff like that. And it was kind of funny. He goes, well, what are you guys doing? I said, well, I'm playing the airport game. He goes, well, what's that? This is obviously before pandemic times, so you could actually meet people and talk. So he came around on the other side and sat next to me, and we were talking for a while. And I said, well, we evaluated you when you went by. You want to know what we got? And he started laughing. He said, sure, why not? So when we looked at him, I said, you're about 40 years old. You're about 5'10", 160 pounds. you're pretty healthy looking. You're from India or Pakistan, but I look at you and I said, I think you're from India, and you're in an upper caste, and you're an engineer, and you're married with kids, and you live in America. And I looked at him and I said, you look like a kind of guy that I would like to meet. Obviously, you came around here and you look like a good guy, and I think I'd want to meet you. Now we're having a conversation, and it's pretty neat. He was shocked. I said, well, what's the results of our test here? He says, I'm 41 years old. I'm 5'10", which was exactly right, because that's how tall I am. He weighed 165, which is all, we gave him a little skinnier. He was a mechanical engineer. He was married with 2 kids. He'd been in America for 6 years, and his kids were born here. And he was very happy to be here. And he didn't tell me what caste he was from, because he was probably embarrassed by that. So it was pretty funny. He sat there and we started playing it with him then. And what's the funny part about this is that because he was from India, I called it the caste attitude. He looked at everybody in a section of caste rather than rich, poor, medium, kind of like we do. We mix. For them, everything was set straight like that. And I would look at someone and I'd say that. He said no. He would say he looked like that. And looking at the same person. And it gave me another view that you could look at the exact same thing and everybody has a different opinion and a different insight on it, just from their background and what they've learned and what they've done. So that opened up both my kids' eyes, because they said, how can they have been like that? We know it's like this is the way we're brought up. I said, well, he knows it's like that because that's the way he was brought up. And that taught them a very big lesson also, which was pretty neat, that you could look at the same thing and you need to actually get information from the people to find out whether it's true or not. So we practice this all the time. When we're anywhere, we have fun with it. In fact, we used to do commercials on TV where we would turn the sound off and see if we could figure out what the commercial was, which was pretty easy most of the time. And then we would make a bogus commercial about it and start making fun of the commercial about it, what something funny about the commercial was. So we could read the commercial and see what the insights of the commercials were. And we did that with people too. So we started kind of making fun, especially if the people came by many times when they were waiting. We would have nicknames for them. You know, there's the slow toady and, you know, the gazer, because the guy would be looking at the ceiling the whole time, walking around. And it became quite fun. So remember, life is filled with all these kind of decisions. And when you meet people, you have to make decisions on how you're going to treat them on the way. When you don't know how to treat them right, you could easily make a faux pas or something incorrect that just doesn't do well with the person. But if you observe beforehand or slowly work into the person there, you could find that you won't make those insults because you found another road path because of different opinions and different ways of looking, like with this Indian guy, of things to where you already had ahead of time, and you actually can meet at a good proper middle point. And it's kind of neat when you can do that. Before, you could have made a mistake and you would never have met a new friend. But now, because you know this middle point and you know how to do that, it makes it fun. It makes life a whole lot better, because you can go into situations where you have never been before, but feel confident because you have a skill that can make you feel confident that you're there and that you know what you're doing, and you're not going to make as many mistakes as you normally would. So that's pretty much the airport game. It's a lot of fun. You can play it anywhere, and it teaches you a lot of things about people. Once again, this is Dan Fredrickson, and I want to remind you that the only change that you can control is the change you do in yourself.